Today we're thinking of we're going to be doing section 5 today, which is installing and configuring Active Directory. Now this is a really fun one because um, at least many of us are like we've had Active Directory, we know how to configure Active Directory and all that stuff. But we'll be testing our knowledge today. So that's what we're doing. We're saying, okay, what exactly do you know? So just to begin with, just so we know, so if you just give your own explanation, so just think about it. You are in an interview and someone is asking you, okay, you're a sysadmin. Explain to us the concept of Active Directory. How would you explain it? Who wants to go first? Enrique, you always go first.
It sounds like an imposition. Okay, no problem. I think that I start by explaining that Active Directory is a kind of database of objects.
Yeah.
When you can control access and permissions.
Yeah.
We can create, the objects, some of them are users, printers, groups. By the way, groups can be security or distribution.
Yeah.
I think that this is the way how to start by explaining what is Active Directory.
Okay. Nice one. So what about you, Ozzy? What's like Active
Uh,
Directory?
I'll just have to follow up to what Enrique mentioned. It's just a database that stores all your user information, groups, OUs, all the pertinent information to your environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Nice one. Okay. So you mentioned something. You mentioned the point. You said Active Directory is a database. So um, the database that we're talking about. So what sort of database is it? So I think the first thing we'll do is let's go on our server that we're using. Let's bring up one of the domain controllers. So Active Directory is a database. So what sort of database is it?
Um,
Eric, you got any thoughts on that? So what sort of database is Active Directory? Or if I ask you and I say, do you know where the database is located on the system? Do you know where the database is on the system? What do you think, Enrique? Where's the location of the Active Directory database? Ah,
Mm,
Eric says the sysvol folder. Do you agree with him?
Not actually. I think that we have C drive and some folder called the ntds.
Yeah. And what's the file called?
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Jose, what about you? What do you think? Like Eric says sysvol folder, Enrique said there's a folder called ntds. So if I tell you, okay, so Active Directory is the database, so where's the Active Directory file? Where is it located on the system?
it's a .dit file. It's under ntds. I think it's under the C drive,
Yeah.
uh, and then ntds, and then ntds.dit, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah. You're right. Absolutely. So let's get on this domain controller here. Um, Anytime you're talking about Active Directory, there are two main folders, or two main folders that you should always remember. The first folder is the one that you just mentioned, that Enrique mentioned, and you mentioned, what was it? And that is the ntds folder. And okay, let's go. And the ntds folder, what it contains is your Active Directory database. So the Active Directory database itself is a single file. It's a single file that's sitting on your C drive. So under C, Windows, ntds, there's a file there called ntds.dit. That is your Active Directory file. So that's the first folder that you should be familiar with when it comes to Active Directory. The second folder is the one that Eric mentioned. So Eric, sysvol folder doesn't contain your Active Directory database. It contains something else that is important to Active Directory. Does anyone know what the sysvol folder contains? Anyone? Sysvol folder. So there are two main folders. We've mentioned one, ntds folder. Really important folder. In fact, the most important folder on your domain controller, because your database, everything you're doing, it's sitting on that in that folder. Then the next one is sysvol folder. So what is the sysvol folder? What does it do? Or what does it
Mm,
contain?
I think that is something related with the content of the GPOs that will be applied on the objects, on the users or computers.
Content of GPUs. What do you think, Jose? Do you agree or do you disagree with Enrique?
Uh, I think I'll agree. I know for replication purposes, it looks into that folder. So I agree.
Okay. What about you? What about you, Eric? What do you think? So if you go C, Windows, there's a folder called ntds. Here we go, ntds folder. And inside it, you see this file here, ntds.dit. And dit stands for, Jose, what does dit stand for?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
So dit stands for Directory Information Tree. So that's
Okay.
what dit stands for. So yeah, it's just Direct Information Tree. There's a history behind it, but it's just an history lesson. So ntds.dit. So and then you have the log files. Now you go back under the sysvol folder, you go sysvol. So they are all under C Windows, and you have sysvol here. And Enrique is absolutely right. Sysvol folder contains your group policy object, and every machine on this domain has access to this sysvol. So it contains your Active Directory, sorry, your group policy object. But not only that, you can see policies. It contains your things like logon scripts that you have. So that's the sysvol folder. So your group policy object and your logon script. Okay. So let's talk more about this directory file, this Active Directory file, because we say it's a database. As a database, it stores things like users and everything. So does anyone know what the partitions are for Active Directory database? What is inside? So if I go see here and I go ntds, this file here, what is inside it? So on number one, or let's put it this way, this file here, how do I even open it? If I want to open this file and see what is inside this file, how do I do that? I think I lost connection.
I don't know, I just got discouraged and I just stopped studying for a while now. I just got back to it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hello, sorry guys, my internet connection went off.
Okay.
It just dropped off completely. It's yeah. And funny enough, my landlord just updated it to fiber, and we're supposed to have this super stable network connection. But yeah, so okay. What we're saying before, we're talking about um, ntds.dit. So how do I access the content of this file if I want to access the content of this file? Now,
Notepad?
the reason why we're doing this is not more like we'll see the reason later, but this is like because once you understand the details about it, you won't be afraid of it anymore. You understand what's actually going on because it's easy to come and just go, we can just do that. We can just come and go, yeah, this ntds.dit, it's your Active Directory file. That's it. Bye bye. But once you understand what's actually inside it, you understand when you get to like the advanced studies, you understand exactly what is going on. Because this file that you're seeing here, it's important to everything in that it's important to replication. If you don't understand this file, you'll find it difficult to understand when we start talking about Active Directory replication. So this file, if I want to open the content of this file, how do I open the content of this file? Anyone? What do you think? In what way? How do I open the content of
I
ntds.dit?
would probably say Notepad. Never opened it.
Actually, Jose, let's get you to open it. So if you take over the computer, take over the mouse.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay.
So go on the server manager
Oh, okay.
and go under tools and go under add C edit. There you go.
Yes,
So
I had it.
if you want to view the content of the ntds.dit file, there are different things. So you can see my screen, right? So actually let's go here first. Let me bring up Microsoft Paint.
Actually, I have to step away for a quick minute. I'll be right back.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no problem. Yeah, no problem. I think in the meantime we'll get Enrique to continue.
Okay.
Yeah. So
You love Paint, okay?
so
It's a great way to teach.
yeah. So the ntds.dit file, right? ntds.dit file.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the things that there are many things that you can use to open it. In fact, there are lots of free applications online that you can use to open it. If you just look for anything like LDAMP editor online, yeah, if you look for something like LDAP editor online, you'll find lots of free applications that you can use to view the ntds.dit file. But here's the thing is that if you go ntds.dit, in Active Directory, there's an application called ATSI Edit, or another one that comes is called ldp.exe. So with these ones, you can actually view and edit the content of the ntds.dit file. My microphone is not muted. Can you still hear me, right? You can still hear me. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So with this, we can still view the content of the ntds.dit file. So let's get you to do that. So here's the thing. Before we get you to continue, the ntds.dit file is a database, right? As a database, it has different, so let's maximize this. It has different partitions. So it has different partitions.
Okay.
Now let's go, well, so ntds.dit. So it has different partitions. One of the partition is called the schema. So
Mm-hmm.
the first thing we'll do is we'll get you to go into that file and then let's open and see the schema. So to open it, if you right click on add CAD, so if you, yeah, you can take over the mouse, Enrique. Feel free. We'll get Eric to
Okay.
do one also shortly. So if you take over the mouse and right click on Add to Edit and click Connect to, yeah. So now it says, okay, you want to connect to an elder database. What do you want me to connect to? You see where it says select a well-known naming context. If you expand that,
Where?
where it says select a well-known naming context. Yeah. So if you expand that and click on schema and click OK. So there you go. Now you're connected to the ntds.dit file. You're connected to the schema partition in that file. So here's my next question. What is inside the schema? What does it mean by when it says schema? What does it mean by schema? Because these things, the whole point is we want to get to a point where we're not afraid of them anymore. Where when someone mentions them, we know exactly what they're talking about. So what is inside the schema? Eric, what do you think? You can type. So when Eric is typing, Eric, what do you think is inside the schema?
Hmm.
So,
Well,
yeah, carry on.
I don't know exactly what it has inside,
Mhm,
but I know that the schema controls, for example, uh, the the options you have in some menu. Uh, for example, if you double click a user
mhm,
and go to properties,
mhm,
sometimes if you have a exchange installed on your environment, you can see some tabs called email or exchange options, all this stuff. And but if you don't have the exchange on your environment, you don't see these tabs. I know that the schema actually controls this kind of things.
yeah, you're actually in the right direction. So here's what the schema.
Mm-hmm.
So the schema. When they say the schema, yeah, here's the way to understand it. Or here's the way I understand it. Everything in Active Directory, everything is an object.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in Active Directory is an object. So if I go here, everything in AD is an object. So every single thing. So your users, they are objects. Your computers, they are objects.
Mm-hmm. Printers,
Yep, printers are objects. What other objects do we have? Site,
contacts.
contact, good one. Contacts are objects, site are objects. But the thing
Yeah.
is, what defines what type of object you can have? Because there must something that defines you can have an object called a printer. You can
Mm-hmm.
have an object called a site. You can have an object called a computer. You can have an object called a site link. You can have all
Mm-hmm.
these objects. Something must define the type of object you can have in Active Directory. So that when you right click and you go new, it tells you, well, you can create a new OU. You can create a new user. Which one do you want? So let's see what defines that. So if you double click on schema there, and then double click on schema, yeah, double click on that. Now look at this. Here you find two classes. There's a class called class schema. Class schema defines the type of object you can have. So for example, class schema here tells you CN equals to account. What that means is you can have an object called an account. So actually, let's sort this. So let's sort this. Look at this. That means we can have an object called an ACS policy. We can have an object called a computer. We can have an object called configuration. We can have an object called contact. We can have an object called container. We can have an object called country. Do you know we have this much object in Active Directory? Look at this. We can have an object called the domain. We can have an object called a file link tracking. We can have an object called a group.
Friendly country.
Exactly. So that is so just to reiterate for Jose. So what we're talking about, we talked about, okay, ntds.dit file. Yeah. What is inside
Mm-hmm.
it? We said inside it, you'll find certain partitions. You'll find partitions inside the ntds.dit file. One of the partitions you find is something called the schema. So just think of when you hear ntds.dit, think of it like this file this way. So this file has different partitions. So one partition that you find here is something called our schema. And we said, what is our schema? What is inside that schema? So the thing we did is we'll let Enrique connect to the schema partition inside that ntds.dit file, so that we can see what is inside. And the first thing we said was that the schema, so everything in Active Directory is an object. Your users are object. You have printers, object, computer object. What is it that defines the type of objects that you can have? That thing is the schema. So the schema is the one that defines you can have an object called a user. So if we go here, you see, if you keep scrolling down, we'll find an object called a user. So the thing that lets us know that we can have an object called a user is the schema. So if we scroll down, can you see? So here we have an
Mm-hmm.
object here called a user. So we have an object called a server. So we have, look at how many objects. So where it says class schema here, class schema are the object types that you can have in Active Directory. But here's the thing is that now we know that schema defines the type of objects that we can have. But those objects must have properties, right? For example, the schema tells you you can have an object called a user. No, not the object themselves. So Eric is asking, so does that mean the schema is the object in AD? No, not the object. So the schema just defines the types of objects that we can have. Yeah, so it's not the object. So it doesn't define the object itself. It just defines these are the type or the classes. So you can see here it says class schema. So it's telling you these are the classes of objects that you can have. So for example, if we go here and go server manager and go tools and go Active Directory users and computers, and not only Active Directory users and computers, let's go to Active Directory sites and services. So I right click here and I go new. What is it that defines that I can have something called a computer? That comes from the schema. I have
Mm-hmm.
Active Directory sites and services. If I go sites and services here, I can go right click and go new site. What is it that defines that I can have an object called a site? That is the schema. Do you get it now, Eric? So, but the thing is, if you create an object called a user, that object must have certain properties. It must have a name. It must have an email address. So the schema defines two things. It defines the type of objects that you can have and the properties that each object will have. So let's go back to our screen. So the schema, what does it define? Schema defines the types of objects that we can have and the properties of those objects. Is that clear at all? Is that clear to anyone? Is that clear to you, Enrique? What about Jose? Is that
Yeah.
clear?
Yep, that
Yeah,
sounds great.
because the whole point, one of the whole point is in IT we use a lot of big words. You've heard me say this over and over again. People come in, I come in and I'm like, Jose, I just extended the schema and not only that. Now I can just throw a bunch of words and confuse you and you're like, whoa, that guy is really intelligent. Schema. The guy just extended the schema. I have no idea what the schema is. And we throw all this bunch of big words in IT, but they are really simple things. They are really, really simple things. A schema is just something that says, okay, you can have an object called users, computers. The user will have properties called name. So let us go back inside our schema partition here. Class schema defines the object. Attribute schema defines the properties of those objects. For example, your user account, we have a property called expiration time, right? So you can see there's a
Yeah.
property under attribute schema says account expires. So account name history, that's a property type. So you see all these property types, they are all defined by the schema.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
I noticed two types of schema, class and attribute.
So it's I won't say two types, I will say the two things that schema defines. So schema defines the class. So the class simply means the type of objects that we can have. Attribute simply means the properties of those objects. So let me put it this way. You've heard of people say things like if you want to install Microsoft Exchange to your infrastructure today, one thing that Microsoft Exchange will ask you to do is run a script before you install Microsoft Exchange, and they will say the script will extend your schema. Or you want to install System Center SCCM. SCCM, they will tell you run a script before you install it. So they will tell you this script will extend the schema. When they talk about extending schema, you know what happens? It will just add new properties. That's all that's happening. So Exchange will come and add new properties. Maybe Exchange will be like, I need a property called picture so that each user can have a picture. So it will just add a property here, an attribute schema called picture. You get the point? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe SCM is like, oh, okay. Eric is asking a question. Eric says, so ADUC is part of the schema. By extend the schema, you mean it will give you more options within exactly. So the options that you have within AD, that's a good word, Eric. The options are defined by the schema. If the schema does not define the options, you don't have the option. If the schema does not define that there's an object called a site, you can't create a site. If the schema does not define that there's an object called user, you can't create a user. If the schema does not define that this object called the user, you can have a name for him, you can have an email address for him, you can have a country for him, you won't be able to see all these fields in Active Directory. You get the point? So that's the schema. So let's at least you get the point, right?
In such a way, schema concentrate the rules, um, the way others softwares like Exchange or System Center uh, to concentrate inside the Active Directory.
Yeah. So the schema just shows what is available. This is the framework of what you can have in this directory.
I lost your
Oh,
sound.
sorry.
Can you repeat,
Yeah.
please?
So the schema just defines these are the things that you can have in Active Directory. So
Okay,
you want to yeah, go ahead.
let's put in this way. If you install in your environment a Exchange, you need to have some kind of objects. Okay,
Yeah.
uh, the schema will say, yeah, you can have this kind of new objects
Yeah,
inside your Active Directory.
exactly.
The
Or
same way to System Center, the same way, I don't know, Link.
Exactly, but not even only objects, it will even tell, you can even add more properties. For example, one of the
Uh,
things that Exchange will add is it will add a field that will point to the location of your mailbox in the Exchange database.
mhm.
So it will just add, so so the user object exists. So Exchange will just add and say, oh, the user object that exists, let us give him a new property type. So this new property type will point to the location of his mailbox database so that when you go to Outlook and you click Outlook open, you don't have to be typing my mailbox is located in this database. From Active Directory, it can find this is where your database is and just automatically open all your mails in Outlook. Same thing with
Okay.
System Center. So they're just adding property. So they're just object and property. That's all that's in the schema. So we can see it right here. It's not complicated. I mean, look at it. We have class, attributes. So we can see exactly what is inside what we call the schema. So that's the first thing. So let's go a step further. So
Let me ask you.
yeah, carry on, sir.
Um, Maybe I'm too forward, but
Yeah,
if inside ntds,
yeah.
okay, .dit, we have just a schema. Where is the objects itself?
So good, we'll get there. So we mentioned there, we said we have
Uh-huh.
different partitions. So that's only one partition. So inside that file, that big file called ntds.dit, you have all these
Uh,
partitions. One partition is defining the type of object you can have and the properties of the object. The second one is called the configuration partition. So what is this one defining to us? What this one is defining is the structure of your infrastructure. What do I mean by that? Let's go and see it for ourselves. So Eric will get you to do this one. We'll come back to Jose. So Eric will get you to do this one. So if you right click on schema at the top, the one that Enrique opened, so right click on schema. Mm, yeah, something similar, Eric. Something similar. Eric, are you still there? Because we want you to do something on the server so you can move the mouse on the server. And we want you to right click schema at the top. So schema at the top, at the left hand side. Are you having troubles? Okay, I think should we get Jose to continue? We'll come back to you then. Okay, Jose, if you right click schema at the top there on the left hand side. Yeah. And then if you click, no, the one at the top, the one at the top. Yeah, that one, and click remove. And you can click remove. Yeah. So let's remove that. Yeah. Yeah. So we remove that. So we mentioned ntds is one of the tools you can use to see what is inside the ntds.dit. So if you right click on ntds and click connect to, so this one is telling you which partition of that ntds.dit do you want to connect to. So under select a well-known naming context, if you expand that, well-known naming context, yeah, if you expand that. Now the one we connected to before is the schema partition. Now let's connect to the configuration partition. Let's see what is inside this partition. So if you click OK, yeah, and if you expand it, let us see what exactly is inside this partition. Actually, this one will even explain something to us. So here we go. We're inside configuration partition. First thing I'd like to show you inside configuration partition, I said it defines your Active Directory infrastructure. Look at this thing here called partitions. These are all the partitions that you have inside the ntds.dit file. So here you have your schema partition. Here you have your configuration partition. Here you have your DNS partition. Here you have your domain partition. So these are all the partitions that you have inside the ntds.dit file. You'll find them under the configuration partition because it's basically just defining this is your Active Directory infrastructure. This is what it's like.
No matter how big is your environment or small, you always have the same structure of the configuration partition.
Yes, there could be exceptions because we'll come back to this one. Is that when we get to DNS, when we get to the DNS partition, we'll talk about this one more. Because we have a partition here for DNS, right?
If you don't have a DNS integrated.
Exactly. So how come we have a partition for DNS? Because here's the thing. Let's go back to our map. So we have schema, right? Let's go
Yeah.
back to home. We have one of the things is we don't want you to be afraid whenever you hear ntds.dit schema or anything like that again, because you know exactly what's going on. So you have schema, we have configuration here. Yep. So the next thing that we said we'll have is we'll have another one called domain.
Chris,
Yeah.
I think um, I think you should share all those files you did on our Hangouts on G Drive.
Which one is that? Um,
Oh, all those pent files you wrote some tips to us after you finish the rundown.
you mean this
You
one?
can save it. Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Because they look
Uh,
really, really off. I was thinking, they look.
no.
How,
Don't.
how do I get to that Google Drive, all those files? I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's a guy on our page called Zoe. He's one of the moderators. So he's been the one handling that for us. So
Okay.
he can give you access to that. So if you look on some of the previous posts, you'll find a post from him where he says, leave your email address here if you want access to this. And just put your email there, send it to him, and then he will give you access.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Same thing with Eric, if Eric needs that. Okay, so back to this one. So we have the schema partition, we have the configuration partition, we have the domain partition. So this will answer your question when we get there, Enrique. You mentioned, what about the objects of Active Directory? Where are they stored? They are stored in this domain partition. So then we have another partition called the application partition. Now, the reason why I'm writing this one, why I want to quickly mention this one, is because application partition, you can have as many as possible. So anybody can write, you can have an application that you want to integrate it with Active Directory. And if you want to write your application to integrate with Active Directory, it will need a partition to store all its data. You have to create a separate partition for it. That's the way DNS works with Active Directory. If your DNS is Active Directory integrated, what will happen is DNS will actually create a separate partition within Active Directory and store its data in that partition. So that's why if we go back under /c edit here, you see that DNS, so here's one you see. You see that this one, it has a name, right? This is your domain. This one, it has a name. This is your configuration partition. This one, it has a name. This is your schema partition. Now look at this one. They only have globally unique identifiers, GUIDs. They don't have a name. Why? Because they're applications. And the thing is that these partitions must have a unique name. So if it's an application, you won't find it have a standard name. It will have a GUID number. I'm not sure if that's clear.
Yeah. So how would you know what application's using that though?
Yeah, it's simple. For
You
example,
ask the same
yeah,
question.
all you need to do is look here. You usually find from the name here. For example, this one says the name of this application that's using this is Forest DNS Zone. The name of the application that's using this is Domain DNS Zone. So If you have another application that's using it, from the name, you see what is actually what the application is that is using that partition. So you can have many application partitions. You can have, if you have, let's say you go out, you buy a new HR application, and you're like, this new HR application, it integrates with Active Directory. And then you install it and it integrates with your Active Directory. And then you come back and check on that configuration. You may find out that now you have another partition. And that HR system has actually just created a new partition within your Active Directory.
So that happens behind the scenes? That all happens behind the scenes? Or do you have to actually go in there and do that?
Usually, like in case of DNS, you have to manually select an option to say, make this DNS zone Active Directory integrated, right? For example,
Right.
if I go under Tools, DNS, go Tools, DNS, and I go, let's just try to create we won't create it, but let's go new zone. Let's go next. See this. It's asking you, it's not saying, so any application you are installing will usually give you an option to say, do you want to integrate this thing with Active Directory? Because if,
Oh, okay.
yeah, no application, no software vendor should just create something that is doing, that is performing a
Mm-hmm.
function on your Active Directory without you actually doing it. They're just creating, they're just creating all
Right.
kinds of application, all kinds of partitions on your Active Directory. Normally, they should give you the option to select it. So Microsoft has given you an option to say, do you want to store this in Active Directory? So so if I select this option, if I'm just creating a new zone, let's say there's no zone on this computer before, and I'm just creating a new zone. If I select this option, that is when it goes into add into this one, into the dit file, and creates these partitions that we see here. So that's why this one, it actually has no name. This one that we're talking about, it has no name. It's application partition. You can have as many as possible. But this first three,
So,
yeah, carry on.
sorry. So if we create a new partition in DNS,
Hmm.
we're gonna see one more line in AD.
No, because so if I go, let's go, let's see edit.
Here we don't gonna see one more line here.
Actually, let's do that. Let's do that. I've not practiced that before, so let's do that. So let's
Mhm.
go DNS manager. Let's go store this in
Okay.
Active Directory. Let's just give it another name. Now look at this option. Select, okay, yeah, we'll come back to this one later. Let's call this test.com zone. Let's go next. Yeah, next. Finish. So now we have a new zone.
Yeah.
So let's go back to hardware edit and let's refresh and let's see. No, no,
No.
no. So I think he just stores these inside this one still. He just stores it,
Inside the
yeah,
Okay.
domain.
yeah,
Yeah.
domain DNS zones. So he just stores it inside the domain DNS zones.
Yeah. This
Yeah,
partition is just for new applications, not for new zones or something
exactly.
else concerning about applications.
Yeah, so it's for new
Yeah.
application. So you have a new application, it won't. And one of the reasons, why do you think applications will want to be storing their data in Active Directory? What's the reason you can think of?
For compatibility purpose,
No, no,
because in this way
yeah.
you can have sure about how the things are saved, configured, and shared, or I don't know, all these kind of things.
Yeah, that sounds close, but I'll tell you the main reason. Here's the main reason. Yeah, Eric says to easily manage. Well, not really. Think about it. Active Directory has been almost the same since year 2000, yeah, since the year 2000. Just little
Mhm.
feature improvement, but the structure has been the same. Why do you think that is? Because Active Directory is a very intelligent system, very, very intelligent system. It's been built in such a way. Think about the infrastructure, the replication infrastructure of Active Directory, multi-master replication infrastructure. You can make changes on any of the systems and it will transfer to any of the system if they are within a site within minutes, sometimes within seconds. And if one of them fails, one is stable. So what Microsoft has done with the DNS is why not take advantage of this awesome replication technology that is inside Active Directory? Instead of building a separate zone for DNS, having to manually configure replication, Active Directory is already replicating itself anyway to every domain controller. Why not take advantage of that? Store your data in Active Directory, you know, create a new partition, store your data in it. When Active Directory is replicating to another domain controller, it is replicating all your data. And the thing is, it is replicating it securely. So you don't have to be configuring IPsec and SSL. The infrastructure, the technology that Active Directory uses by default is secure. So applications can decide, let us take advantage of this strong and secure replication mechanism and just use this for our application rather than us creating, okay, you want to have a server on this one, to have another server, then configure application or configure network load balancing. Just use Active Directory infrastructure to do that already. That does that already. Just store your data in it and it will move it around. So, for example, think about this. Let's go back to our slide. So, let's do something quickly. So, if I copy this, Control C. Let me bring up a new paint. So in Active Directory, you have things called your domain controller, right? We have a big domain controllers. So let's say this is your domain controller. Your domain controller has the ntds.dit file, which has all these partitions on it. Now you go on your domain and you create another Active Directory domain controller, and then you create another Active Directory domain controller on your domain. Now what happens is that if any change is made on this one, it will notify these two and say there's a change that's been made on me. And this one will basically pull this partition, sorry, pull the ntds.dit file to itself and pull the ntds.dit file to itself. So what that means is that if your data is in one of these application partitions, as Active Directory is replicating, it is replicating your data also. You get the point? So you don't have to be building your own separate replication infrastructure. You can take advantage of Active Directory's existing replication infrastructure. That's what DNS does. So now DNS can be as stable as Active Directory. You don't have to be configuring your own replication manually. DNS can be if something were to happen and this DC fails, you don't have to be worried that, oh, my DNS is on that, because when it was moving this ntds.dit file to this machine, it moved all your DNS data also. So you get the point. So that's the main reason. So you see the partitions under the configuration partition here. So those are the partitions that Active Directory has. You see your sites. So you see the different sites that we have. You see the different subnets that we have. You see the inter-site transfer that we have. So basically, again, configuration contains all the information about your AD infrastructure. That is configuration. So let's move a step further. So the next one is domain. So we're now to the one that Enrique mentioned. So what does the domain do? The domain simply just stores all your objects. So the objects that the schema has defined, that these are the types you can have and the properties you can have. So when you actually create one of them, where are they stored? They are stored in this domain partition. You get the point? So let's go examine that domain partition now. So Eric, we'll try to get Eric to do this one if it works this time. So let's go back to rt-edit. So if you right click configuration at the top and close that. So hopefully it works this time. Yeah. So right click on that. and you can, yeah, remove it. Yeah. And then if you right click, so remember htedit again is a way to, is what you can use to connect to the ntds.dit file. But you can't just connect to everything in ntds. You have to specify the partition you want to connect to. So now under default naming context, if you expand that and this time around select, yeah, so default naming context down there. So if you expand that, yeah. So actually, we're already on the one that we want. What we want is the default naming context. Default naming context stands for the domain that you are currently on. So you're connecting to the domain partition. So if you click OK on that, on default naming context and click OK, yeah, and then expand that. So double click on it. Yeah, expand it more. Expand the arrow next to it. Yeah, expand it more. So can you see all your Active Directory? You can see, right? So if you expand users, double click on users. There you go. So you can see all the users that we have. We have administrator, guests, and all these ones.
These are all the built-in accounts.
Yeah. So this where they are stored. So they are stored under this partition. So again, remember all the partitions we're talking about. We have schema, the type of object you can have and their properties, configuration, your Active Directory infrastructure, the partitions that you have, the sites that you have, the site links that you have, the services that you have, domain, which are the objects that you've created. Then we have application partition. So from this one, can anybody try to so we have DNS partition on this Active Directory infrastructure. If I want to connect to it, can somebody try to connect to it? Anyone wants to try it? MVK or or Jose or Eric? So you want to try? So try to connect to the DNS. So we want to see our DNS partition from within @cad. So we don't want to go under DNS because you can go under the DNS MMC, and that's like an easy way to see it. But want to view it from inside ntds.dit. So when we say to our zone, you are Active Directory integrated, which partition is, so it stores it inside the DNS partition on the ntds.dit file. So we want to connect to that partition. So Enrique, give it a try. Let's see if Enrique can find where we can connect to our DNS. So you go on the edit. Let's see. Because this one, I warn you, it has a little bit of twist to it. So you can remove this one so it doesn't get too complicated. Now I want to ask you, as Enrique is doing that, I want to ask you, Jose, now, is this complicated? Is this something that's complicated?
No, I'm just thinking. I've heard of this. I don't know if this database, but I've heard of databases getting corrupt.
Yeah.
So that's scary.
Yeah, it is. Well, here's the thing is that you don't, the only reason why we're looking at it this way is so that we can learn what is inside. So actually in the real world, you don't come here to make changes. If you want to make changes, you go to your normal Active Directory users and computers, you go to your DNS MMC, you don't make the changes from inside, at the edit,
Right.
except maybe Microsoft themselves, as maybe Microsoft support is asking you, go and do this.
Right.
So Enrique has brought something
Yeah,
up.
where
Enrique brought root DSC. So what is inside root DSC? We got nothing there.
yeah.
So,
Strike one.
so what about you,
Well,
Jose?
the problem is we have the application partition,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Yeah.
and inside them we have just that entries we have sim
Mm-hmm.
for,
Yeah.
but inside the DNS
Mm-hmm.
partition, I don't know how to see.
Exactly. So Jose is trying now. So let's see what Jose will come up with. So again, the reason why we're doing this is because we want to learn. We're looking inside the entities.dit file to learn about what is inside. So in the real world, you actually don't have to come into this one that often. So
Mm-hmm.
Ozzy has brought up something. So what's inside what Ozzy brought up? No, that's the domain. You just brought us back to the default naming context.
Oh, yeah,
So,
I'm
so
not
we want the
sure.
DNS partition. Here's the key to that. This will help you. Eric, I'll give Eric. Okay, let me share something. Here's the key to that. So let me cancel, remove this one. Let's go back to the configuration that we talked about, and this will help
Mm-hmm.
you to understand. So if we go back on that configuration, remember that we mentioned something about, we go under partitions. We said there are some partitions that are standard, right? We said the
Mm-hmm.
application partition is not standard. So that's why it has, as a name, it has a GUID number, a globally unique identifier number. So if I go to add the edit and I go connect to, it says select what? A well-known naming context. Well-known naming context mean any of these contexts that are standard ones. In other words, they are well-known, The
Mm-hmm.
application can be any application, third-party application, not even Microsoft application. So it's like, so from here, you can select well-known naming context. That is this one, schema, configuration, and domain. That's the only ones you can select from well-known naming context. Now, for any application partition that you have, it's not a well-known naming context because you can see the name is a GUID number. So you actually have to go to say, type in the naming context of that partition. And the naming context of that partition is this one here. So if I go under partitions here, this one here is the naming context. So if I want to go under default DNS zone, I can go, let's look for the naming context. Yeah, yeah, let's copy this one, cancel. So just copy just that one, and then you go here and go connect to, I'm connecting to this one, paste, and go OK, and there you go. Now, if you drill down to this, now look at what we'll find. Now,
Exactly
yeah.
what I was thinking.
Now, I like that, Enrique. I like that. Look at what we'll find. Now we'll find all our DNS entries. Look at where they are hiding. They are hiding inside the ntds.dit file under the DNS partition. Now we can see all of them. This is where they are. So when Active Directory is doing its replication, it's moving this one also to other domain controllers. So is that clear to us? Is that clear to us now, right? So now we at least we have more understanding of when they say the schema, when they talk about the Active Directory ntds.dit file, we have at least an idea of, yeah, we know exactly what is inside.
Yeah.
We know
Can
we
I
have,
ask you?
yeah, carry on, please.
Always when you have some modification
Mhm.
in Active Directory,
Yeah,
the replication has a smart type of actualizing the data. Okay,
yeah.
so it just update the changed data.
Mhm.
How can this happen about the DNS? They just has a flag in the new objects in the new data inside this schema.
Good question. Now what? It's a good question that we won't get into now because the answer is really long. But here's what I'll tell you. You understand the reason why because many people, I remember the first hangout that we did, one guy we were talking about, we're talking about the minus zero ring, ring minus zero. And one guy was like,
Yeah.
what's the point of all this, it's not something that we ever. But the thing is, once you understand it, it will help your understanding later. You understand exactly the reason why we've done all this. You understand the reason. You may not get the reason now. When we get to under replication in 7412, you understand the reason why we're going through all this. Because not all these partitions are replicated everywhere. For example, the schema partition is replicated to every domain controller in the forest. The configuration partition is replicated to every domain controller in the forest. The domain partition is only replicated to domain controllers within the domain, not to the forest. Application partition is only replicated to domain controllers within the domain, not to the forest. So you understand more about why we are dealing with all this. And then there's another partition, final one, called the global catalog partition. So this one is replicated to not every DC in the forest, every DC that is a global catalog. But we'll get there, just keep this in your mind. Once we get there, you understand the reason why we're digging down to see schema, configuration, domain application. You understand the real meaning behind them. Because let me just give you like a brief illustration. So on this one now, on this, let's say all these machines, let's go all these domain controllers, let's say they are in the same domain. Yeah. When we talk about domain, we say a domain is a replication boundary. In other words, let's say this domain here is enrique.com. This one is enrique.com. Why this one is in the same forest, but it's in a different domain. Let's say this one is let's call it jose.com. Well, it's in the same, so they are in the same big forest, but they are different domains. You can have different domains within the same forest. We'll get to that very soon. So they are in the same forest, but this is a different domain. Now, these two domain controllers are in the same domain. This one is in a different domain in the forest. This domain partition, when it's replicated, it will replicate to this guy here. It won't replicate to this guy here. This schema partition will replicate to this guy here. It will replicate to this guy here because they're in the same forest. Configuration, it will replicate to this guy here. It will replicate to this guy here. But the domain, except we're in the same domain, I'm not replicating anything to you. So that's why they say a domain is a replication boundary. So a domain is like, I'm not replicating anything. My domain partition, I'm not replicating you to you if you are not in my domain. If your domain is jose.com, my domain is enrique.com, sorry, we have no business replicating our domain partition with each other. Because the users and object in this one is different from the users and object in this one. But the schema that defines the types of objects we can have, it is the same thing on all the domain controllers on the forest. The configuration that determines our Active Directory infrastructure is the same on all the domain controllers in the forest, but the domain partition is not the same because the type of the objects that you've created are not the same. You get the point? So
Okay.
we'll get the reason why we are digging down like this when we get to replication. And you understand the reason why this one is really, really important to understand this. So let's go a step further. So here's a trick question for you. Really, really trick question. So now I want to talk
Another
about
one.
this one. This one is an interesting one. Now I want to talk about Active Directory components or objects. But here's a trick question to start with. So so let's see how many people will get this one correctly. Actually, we should start giving points like Enrique used to give. So we said five points if you get this one. So
Okay.
what are the default OUs in Active Directory? So because we want to talk about Active Directory components, and we're going to be talking about trees, we're going to be talking about domain, we're going to be talking about forest, we're going to be talking about OUs, we're going to be talking about sites. So here's my first three questions. What are the default OUs in Active Directory? So Jose, one from you. Enrique, one from you too.
Computers.
Computers, yeah, good one. Computers. Jose, remember again, this is a trick question. Enrique, what's your own?
Users.
Users, okay. Yeah. Eric says sites. Default OUs. No, there's no. Is there any OU called site? So any other one? Remember again, clearly this is a tricky question. So which means let's think more about the question. Look at the question more.
Domain controller.
Domain controllers. Uh, yeah, what else? Which other one? Jose, come on.
The groups, I have no idea.
Yeah, group, okay. Eric, what about you? Come on. Come on, guys. The default OUs in Active Directory. So let's take our marker for today. Yeah, a big red line. Dun, dun, dun.
Ah,
Wrong, wrong, wrong. The only one that's right is this one. And here's the thing, because I mentioned earlier, I said many people think, Active Directory, I already understand, but when you get to actually the internals of Active Directory, it's interesting, actually fun. Look at this, Active Directory. Is this an OU? Is this
no,
an OU?
it,
What,
No,
what is it?
no,
container.
It's a
it's a
container.
container.
Is this an
Yeah.
OU? Is this an OU? Which one is
Oh, wow.
which
That
one is
is a
an
trick
OU?
question.
Which only one is an OU? This
Domain
one.
controller point me.
Just do, so you have 5 points, Enrique. 5 points. Jose has
Okay,
0.
great.
Enrique, sorry, you've got 0, man.
I'm used to scoring 0 points.
So so because many people just think, when they see all this, because they look exactly alike, you're like, yeah, they're OUs. We have OUs. We have all these different type of OUs. No, OUs are different from containers. We have we have
Wow.
we have OUs, we have containers, and they are different. And you know the difference when we talk about group policies next week, because you can't apply group policies to containers. You can't. You can only apply group policies to OUs. So if you have all the users in your infrastructure under this user's container, sorry, you can't apply group policies to them, unfortunately. So if you just put all your users there, yeah, sorry. So you have to create OUs. If you really want to apply group policies to them, you have to create your own OUs. So that's beside the point. So understanding Active Directory, the component of Active Directory.
Sorry,
Yeah,
can you give us a reason to Active Directory manage this kind of thing in this way? I mean, you can't apply any GPOs on containers.
because
What's the reason for that?
containers are meant for something different. Last week, myself and one of um, my friend just hired a new job in a university, and one of the first projects they gave him was to implement SCCM for them. So I was like, yeah, let's practice SCCM together. So we took the documentation and we're going through it together. And the first thing they asked us to do before installing SCCM is create a container, not an OU, a container called system management, because that is where SCCM will store all its objects in Active Directory. So you have to create a container, not an OU, called system management. Thing is, they do different things. OUs are meant for three purposes. OUs are meant, number one, OU do this part of the same work that containers do, to organize your objects. Containers can do that also. They can help you organize your objects. The next thing is to delegate control. So you have um, you have maybe you have an OU there so-called um, maybe London, and you want to give your London admins the right to administer users in this one. You can delegate control. So OUs will do that, containers will do that. But then OUs can do something that containers cannot do, which is to apply group policies. Now think about it. SCCM tells you, you want to install SCCM, create a container called system management that SCCM will store all its objects inside an Active Directory. Do you need to apply group policy to the object of SCCM?
No.
No, exactly. So there's no point. So for that, you need a container. You don't need an OU because you don't need to apply any group policy, to it.
How do you create a container here? I've never seen that
Good
done.
question. You should be able to answer that now. We just went to we just went to @edit together. Come on, give it a go. Go to @edit. See if you can create a container. Ozzy, come on.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. So yeah.
Let's see here.
So @edit. So where do you think, if you want to create an object, where do you think you create the object in @edit? In which partition?
Oh, which part? Yeah. Let's see
Let me ask you. So
here.
will it be the schema partition? No, because the schema partition, what does it contain? The schema partition only contains the types of objects you can have and the properties of those objects. Will it be the configuration partition? Because
Maybe domain.
exactly, so it will be domain because domain is where your objects that you've created are stored. So if you go under the
Mm.
default naming context for the domain, so no, so just go to, so we're not yet there. So if you need to go under the domain partition, so connect to the domain partition first.
Okay, so let me remove, right?
Yeah,
Actually, we have here in the
no, they're
another
not there.
part.
So that one is configuration, that one is DNS.
And let me just.
So
Configuration.
not configuration, will it be configuration?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Right to. So we wanna.
Domain,
Well,
which is,
not.
Enrique, which one is domain?
The first
Schema,
one.
right? Oh,
Yeah,
the first.
yeah.
Sorry.
So, so,
uh. So.
so where do you want to create your container? Yeah,
I'm guessing
yeah,
here.
you're in the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
direction. Yeah, new object.
New object.
There you go.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
Now
Oh,
look at
container.
look at the type of objects that you can create here that you cannot create in Active Directory users and computers.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, create a new container, call it Oze.
Finish.
And then go under Active Directory users and computers and refresh. Let's see. So where's your new container?
Yeah, I don't see it. Huh. Oh wait.
Yeah. Maybe we need to see a advanced settings.
Yeah, go ahead, Enrique.
Oh yeah, there you go. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Good one, Enrique.
Stick to the basics. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. So there you go. So that's how you create a container. So that was how we had to
Oh.
create. So that was how we had to create um, the system management container for SCCM first of all before we started the installation. So we had to do that first. Then when System Center is being installed, it will check Active Directory and say, do I have a container in Active Directory that I can store all my objects? Yeah, it stores all its objects in that container. So trees. What are trees? Active Directory Basics, Active Directory 101. We talk about trees. What in the world are trees? Who wants to go first? Trees. So What trees? Jose, what trees?
I would say trees are uh, trees are part of the forest.
You're right. You won't be wrong. You're right. But in what way?
Um,
Let me give you an illustration. Let's give you a very good illustration here. So we have this one here. Oh, okay. Actually, this is wrong. Again, whenever you're drawing active your Active Directory, diagrams, use triangles as recommended by Microsoft. So let's have a triangle. So let's go. Um, so here.
so the trees are the different domains in your forest.
Let's see. We'll see first. So let's go. We have eric.com here. We have, so this is the, root of the forest. We have enrique.com here. We have jose.com here. So both of these are child domains of this root domain, of this root forest. So this one is connected here. Yeah. And this one also is connected here. So which one of these is a tree?
Enrique and Jose, right?
Okay. Well, we're not sure. Yeah. So tell us the answer, so we'll see whether Enrique agrees with you or not. Enrique, do you agree with him? Which one of these is a
Uh,
tree?
I think the three domains are members of a tree.
Mhm. So which one of these is a tree? So Eric says all of them are trees.
Well, that's true. All of them are trees in the forest, but
Let's even go one way. So this one like this. So is this a tree?
yes.
Enrique, is this a tree?
Yes, I agree.
Eric, is this a tree? Eric says yes. So let's go our marker again. Let's go for a big marker, a big red marker. Mm, mm, mm. Where's that line? I want the line, come on. I want the big line. Uh, go. No, that's not a tree. So let's go back again. So when you talk about a tree is, let's break this one. A tree is collection of domains in capital.
Mm, okay. So, if you would like to make this example uh, be member of a tree, we have to have uh, eric.enrique.com,
Maybe,
something
yeah,
like that.
maybe, maybe this is jose.eric.com,
Uh,
and this one would be enrique.eric.com.
no, no. Oh,
Yeah, so that's to be that. So
okay.
here's the way. So we can have, so again, this is the forest. So this is the old big forest. Everything here. Um, so let's go this one. So this is the forest. Everything here is within the forest. But for you to have a tree within the forest, they have to have a continuous namespace or a contiguous namespace.
I thought we have to have uh, the parent domain first,
Yeah,
and after that my own domain.
yeah. So here's the thing. Here's the thing with Active Directory. You can have this one as the parent domain, yeah,
Hmm.
and have this one as the child domain. But parent-child domain relationship doesn't signify a tree. Parent-child domain relationship that has a continuous namespace signifies a tree. So
Okay.
actually, we can have eric.com here and go, let's create a new child domain. Let's call it enrique.com. We can do that. So we can create a new child domain and call it enrique. Actually, let's even go ahead and do that now. So we have on this server that we're using, we have and we have okay, let's switch on this server, this Hyper-V1, and let's install a new domain, a new child domain. So we already have a domain called enrique.com. So yes, let's draw the diagram of what we have so that we know where we are. So if we go another one, um, so at the moment we have something like this. We have a domain, which is the root domain, and this domain is called adatum.com. So that's the name of this domain or this forest. You can call it anything because, yeah, it's a domain, it's also a forest. But we'll get to that one shortly. So we want to create a new child domain that will have this one as its parent. So this one will be the parent of this one. So if we come here, this new one that I want to create, if we come here and create it as enrique.com, this is not a tree. If we come here and create it as na.adatum.com, this is a tree. So here's what we'll get you to do, because we'll get you to do this yourself and let's see if we can figure this out, because this can also be tricky, what we want to do now. So here's another server that is within the same, that's on the same network that I want to install the domain on. So who wants to do this? Eric, you want to do this? So Eric, we want you to create a new domain, install Active Directory Domain Services on this machine, and then we'll install a new domain, and then we'll see. Because the one I want to show you is the option that is a little bit tricky. There's an option because when you get to the point when you want to create a domain, it will ask you a question. It will ask you, do you want to create a child domain or a tree domain? And that's where I want to get to so we can discuss it. But so Eric, so if you take over the machine here, so install Active Directory Domain and Services. So while that's installing, we'll carry on discussing what we're discussing. So what about a domain? What is a domain? So Enrique, Jose, Eric is working for us. So Enrique and Jose. So what is a domain? How would you describe a domain? Not Active Directory Domain Services, a domain.
The domain
Uh,
is your. Go ahead.
go on.
Come on, who wants to go
Go on,
first?
Jose. Go on.
Jose, 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 Jose.
Your domain is basically uh, your what's the word I'm looking for here? Um, I just lost my train of thought. I guess your domain is your online identity. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Enrique, what about you? What's a domain? We'll define a
Mm,
domain first, and then we'll try to break it down.
okay. Um, in a general way,
Yeah.
domain is a conjunction of um, some objects, or I mean elements, in a particular way.
Mhm.
We have uh, computers, users, and all that stuff. Um, and this meaning, domain is such a bunch of configuration and objects, and as you said, a boundary of relationship.
Mhm. I like that word boundary. Eric said something. Eric said a group of clients and server in one database. Well, maybe not really. Because you can have a group. What about if you have, because you can have a forest and with different domains, and you have objects from one domain living in another domain controller. Maybe when we get to global catalog, we'll discuss that. But here's the word I would like you to look up. So this for you to look up for your own study. Look up this word. I will type it in the chat window. Active Directory Security Boundary. So there are three of them, three sentences. Active Directory Administrative Boundary. Active Directory Replication Boundary. Because those three, they are important when we start discussing things like forest and domain. Here is a popular definition of domain that you find in the high IT circles. You find a definition where they say a domain is an administrative boundary and it is a replication boundary. Now, I don't know about you, but hearing that just confused me more. I was confused before, but after hearing that definition, now I'm more confused. Now, now I'm like, okay, it's a, it's an administrative boundary and a replication boundary. What do you mean by an administrative boundary? Here's what we mean by administrative boundary. Administration is managing something, right? So Enrique has a domain. Yeah, we'll come back to that, Eric. We'll come now. There's something we want to, we'll come back to discuss that. So, um, Enrique has a domain. Jose has a domain. Enrique's domain is enrique.com. Jose's domain is jose.com. The administrators in jose.com cannot manage enrique.com. There's an administrative boundary. In other words, as an administrator, you can only manage within your domain. If you're a domain admin, you can't manage another domain. So that's what they mean by an administrative boundary. So there's an administrative boundary to say if you're in this domain and you're an administrator in this domain, you can only manage the object in this domain. Is that clear?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what they mean by administrative boundary. A replication boundary, what they mean is this. If Jose has a domain and Enrique has a domain, Enrique has two domain controllers on his domain. Jose has two domain controllers on his domain. Jose's two domain controller will replicate the domain partition with one another, but they will not replicate with any domain controller outside their domain. So that's the replication boundary. Like our domain partition will replicate it with each other, but we're not replicating with you if you're outside our domain. So in other,
Okay.
yeah,
So sorry.
carry on.
At that point, if I have two different domains
Yeah,
and we have a kind of reputation happening inside each of the domains,
yeah.
okay, and we have a trust relationship between them.
hmm
It doesn't exchange the replication.
Now, trust relationship changes
Mm.
everything, but this is by
Uh,
default. So there's ways that it goes over that, but by default, there's a way that we can do it that you as an admin in your domain, well, actually the one for administration is not possible. But the one for replication, there's a way we can do it that some of your objects will replicate with Jose's objects in global catalog. When we get to global catalog, we'll discuss that. So there's a way to do that. Um, but by default, your domain controllers by default, without any special configuration, they won't replicate with any other domain controller that is not in their domain by default. So except you now go and now do special configuration, like you said, you're configuring trust relationships and all that, then they can be like, okay, we'll start talking to you, but by default, we're not talking to anyone that is outside our domain. So let's go back to the
Okay.
screen and complete our discussion about trees. So here we go. We've installed Active Directory domain services. Now we want to promote this one to a domain. So look at the options. Let's add the domain controller to an existing domain. No, that's not what we want. Add a new domain to an existing forest. Back to our diagram. We'll click next. Okay, no. Yeah, that's where I want to go to. Yeah. So it says add a new domain to an existing forest. In other words, let me go back to our diagram for a minute. So let's go back to our diagram. Come on, come on. Yeah, okay. Back to our diagram for a minute. In other words, we have an existing forest. So when we create it, although it's a domain, but because it's the first domain, it's the forest root domain, right? So we have an existing forest. We want to create a new domain. Now look at the options that we have. It says, okay, you want to add a new domain to an existing forest. Do you want it to be a child domain or a tree domain? That sounds a bit confusing. You're like, huh? What are you talking about? Child domain, tree domain. Which one is child domain? Which one is tree domain? So, okay, I want to give you an illustration. So let's do this together. So, um, Enrique, if I want to create a tree like this, where this guy, um, where this guy has a continuous namespace with this guy, which one do I select? Child domain or tree domain?
Um, I think child.
Yeah, okay. Jose, what do you think?
Child.
What about you, Eric? What do you think? So let's see Eric's option. Eric says child. Okay, let's give another situation. So let's say now I still want a parent-child relationship, but I don't want it to be a tree. I want it to be a totally different namespace. I want this one to be called eric.com. What do I select? Child, although they are still part of the same forest, but I want this one to have a different namespace. So what do I select? Child or tree?
Tree.
Tree?
Yeah.
Enrique, what do you think? Tree. You're absolutely correct. So that's the thing to watch out for. You know, just always watch out for that. That's the thing to watch out for. So you're all correct. Because because if you see tree, some people just go, okay, if you want this one to be part of the tree, just select tree. Tree simply means you're creating a new tree namespace. So this one can now go, you can now go and have another different child that will have the same namespace for Herrick.com. You get the point? So for example, if I come here, let's go back to the server here. Let's go this one. So let's select child domain, adatum.com. If I go here and I type child domain and I go wiki.com, child domain, look at that. It's like, okay, hold on, what are you doing? You get the point? Because it has to have the same namespace to be a tree. So because I've selected child means I want to create a tree here. So I can only put something like Enrique here. And then look at what will happen if I go next.
So it'll be automatically enrique.datum.com.
Exactly.
Okay.
But now, if I want to create a brand new namespace, okay, hold on. Child domain input field, the domain name Enrique. Yeah, it's still trying to look up Enrique.com for some reason. Can you see that at the top?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go. Okay. Has it gone forward now? Okay, yeah. Now it's gone forward. Okay. Here we go. So you get the point. So if you go back again, so now we have Enrique. Now it's looked it up properly and we go next. No.
So in the real world, in the enterprise environment,
Hmm.
so enterprises are building, well, not all, but from what I experienced, they create child domains per location. So if I have, we have an office here in Pennsylvania, and now we have another office in London, then we'll create a child domain for the London office.
Actually,
Right.
not really. Like actually, from my
No?
own experience, Enrique also can talk of his own experience, and maybe Eric also. From my own experience, most companies, well, at least from the companies that I've worked in, they don't go ahead and have child domains. Actually, you know what Microsoft recommends? Just have a single domain because if you go okay, let me go. So what most company would do is if you go actually let's just use Paint on this one. MS Paint. What most company would do is they have a London office, they have a US office, they have a Brazil office, like you mentioned. Hmm, partial. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So, okay. What they'll do is, let's say we have a site here. These are London office. These are Brazil office. These are US office. What they will actually do is they will have a domain here, you know, called adatum, so called adatum.com or nvk.com or whatever. And actually, all these sites will be in the same domain. They only separate them into different sites. So this one is basically, um, so they have a domain controller here, and the DC is adatum.com. They have a domain controller in the London site, and the DC is also adatum.com. You know, they have a domain controller in the Brazil site, and the DC is also adatum.com. So they basically just have one domain globally, one global domain. Because why, again, why would you want to use separate domains? Think about the definition of a domain. It's an administrative boundary. Okay, let's say you want a situation where, oh, maybe this guy's in London. I don't want them to be able to manage these guys,
Mm-hmm.
in America. There's a way to achieve that within the domain. You can delegate control. You can have different OUs and say, I have an OU called London, an OU called North America, and say, the administrators for North America, you have control over this OU. Administrators in London, you have control over this OU. Administrators in Brazil, you have control over this OU. So you can achieve that without having separate domains. Again, it's a replication boundary. You don't want this one to replicate with this one. You can also achieve that using something called sites, which we'll get to later. So you can achieve that using sites. You don't have to have separate domains to achieve that. So actually, best practice is to make your life simple because the moment you start having, you know, child domains, you're setting yourself up for troubleshooting issues. Because once you start getting replication issues, you see the type of troubles that you get into. When you're trying to read the logs and you're reading na.enrique.com and this one is bu.enrique.com and this one is enrique.com and you're trying to find out which one is going from enrique.com or bu.enrique.com, it can get really complicated. And the advice I'm giving to you, I got from this book here. So let me minimize this one. Let's minimize VMware altogether. I've mentioned this book over and over again. I don't have any gains from this book, but I like this book very much. It tells you about Active Directory. Yeah, look at this. We still have it here. Active Directory, fifth edition. This book by O'Reilly, really good book. I tell you, really good book. I like because it's fun to read. It goes into details about Active Directory. I love it, you know, but it goes into details about designing and deploying. So you want to design. So in this book, I think in chapter, which chapter did I read that? I think chapter when he was talking about maybe chapter 6 or chapter 5. That was when he gave the advice. Actually, use just one domain. That's like a really good practice. Use just one domain, except your manager comes to you and is like, okay, there's a legal reason, or a compliance reason. Use one domain. You know, most things that you want to achieve, you can achieve within a single domain, and you'll make your life easier in terms of replication, troubleshooting, and all that. Otherwise, you get in trouble. So that's a really good book for you and stuff like that. So actually, we
Okay.
have we have very less time left. I'm thinking we can actually keep discussing, or let me just give you guys some challenge labs to do. So let's do a couple of challenge labs before we finish. We have just about 20 minutes left. We are 39 now, so in the next 20 minutes we'll finish. So I'll give you a challenge lab. So basically, it will be like pick your. I don't want to say pick your poison. No, I'm only joking. I'll give this one here where you pick the one that you want to do. So let's go to Active Directory. Let's go. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing that we'll do. I'll write some task on the screen. You pick the one that you want to do, and then you do it. So if you need the machine that we'll use, you just ask me and I will show you the machine. So these are challenge labs. You love them. Enrique, you love this.
Yeah, yeah.
You will, seriously. You will. You love this. I have lots of them here. So um here's the challenge for you guys to do. Just pick one and
Can I give a personal experience?
yes, please. Yes, please, Enrique.
Uh, in the same line of thought,
Yeah.
we have a local admins,
Mm-hmm.
domain admin, and enterprise admin.
Yeah.
Um, it's not so common to use enterprise admin because if you have the necessity of control another domains,
Yeah.
you just create another user as domain admin and you log on with this account in a different domains.
Yeah. Enrique is absolutely right.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, I see it a lot at my company.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. There's only one reason why you want to use something like enterprise admin. What do you think that reason is? Guess. Guess, Enrique. Come on. There's one good reason. It's part of what we discussed today. Schema.
I don't know.
Schema. If you want to extend the schema, can you do it as a domain admin? No, you can't. Because where
Yeah,
does the
yeah.
where does the schema master, where does it live? Does it live within the domain or within the forest? The
The
FISMO roles.
forest, right?
The FISMO roles, exactly. So the FISMO roles again, FISMO roles, where do they live? FISMO. So what are the FISMO roles? Jose Enrique, FISMO roles.
Um, I have no idea.
Enrique, FISMO roles.
Well, it is the
Oh, the Red Master, I know that one.
Yeah,
five files that controls the whole environment about Active Directory.
yeah. So what
We
do they do?
have global catalog, we have
Hmm?
schema,
Not
we
global
have
catalog. Schema, yeah, schema is right.
Red Master, right?
Yeah, read master is right.
oh yeah,
Which one again?
uh,
PDC emulator?
Yep, PDC emulator, good one. Which other one? Last
I
one?
forgot.
Infrastructure. Master. Okay.
Yeah. So this these two, they live in the forests. Why these three, they live in the domain? In other words, if you have um, if you have a domain here, a domain here, a domain here, and all these domains are part of a single forest. In this forest, you have one domain naming master and one schema master. But inside this domain, this separate domain, you have one read, one PDC emulator, one infrastructure master. Inside this separate domain, you have another read, another PDC emulator, another infrastructure master. Inside this separate one, you have another read, another PDC emulator, another infrastructure master. You want to make any changes to the schema, it must be done on the schema master. And you can only do it as an enterprise admin or a schema admin. So that's one reason why you want to use enterprise admin. It's because if you want to make any
Okay.
changes to the schema, you want to do like the thing, you want to install Exchange or you want to install System Center that needs to extend the schema, you need to do it as an enterprise admin. An account that has the right to extend the schema. So as a domain admin, because a domain admin, again, it's an what? It's an administrative boundary. So you can't administer anything outside this domain with a domain admin. The domain admin in this domain cannot administer this domain. But
Oh, okay.
the
Well,
enterprise admin can administer all of them. So let's quickly round up with this one. So just few little tasks for you. So the first one, Enrique, you wanted to say something and see your mouth.
Yeah. Sorry. Can you Control Z this picture to I print screen it?
Oh, the other thing I usually think is because I'm thinking we're recording this.
Ah, okay, okay. No problem.
No, don't worry. Okay, I'll start saving them for you now, I promise. I'll start saving them for you. So he says, okay. So this is the first thing. And these ones are really important. Now, one of the reasons why they're really important is you may see them in Microsoft may ask you questions like this in your exam. So you need to, okay, install ADDS on a server core.
got. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So let's go install ADDS on a server core. Promote to a DC. So number one, number two, install a DC from IFM. Number three, configure global catalog. Now this one that I want to ask is important. Um, server and number four, change the default location of um, haha, this four. So which one? Who wants to go for the first one? Come on, you have 5 minutes for one because we have 15 minutes left. So who wants to go for the first one? So which one do you want to pick?
I can do try to do the first one, but
Okay,
I'm gonna need Google.
you have 5 minutes, so we'll time you.
Shoot.
So let's go. So the machine that you'll be using. So you want a server core machine. So we have a server core machine for you. So let's power this on. Yep. So there you go. Server core machine for you. Let's cancel this. So you can take over the mouse.
All right. Let me do some research.
You have 5 minutes. You have 4 minutes more.
Okay. All
I'll
right.
put,
All right. Let's see. Da.
so in the chat window, you see what the password is. So you got the password there. So that's password.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let me
Enrique,
see.
which one do you think you can do from those ones? Do you think you
The
can,
second one,
the
Silvia?
sec- from IFM media, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your understanding of IFM media?
It is
Uh,
install from media.
Yeah.
You can make a media
Mhm.
and update
oh,
all your records, or I mean, all your data
Mhm.
in the Active Directory
Mhm.
and avoid network consumption.
Yeah. Good one. Very good one. I mean, that's really excellent one, Enrique. Make sure you probably need that for the exam. You may,
Yeah.
you may,
um,
you may need it for the exam.
I'm
Um,
doing Control Delete, but it's not letting me.
no, just click that one. This one. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
Man, I just used 3 minutes trying to log on. Alright, yeah, let's see here. And I need to install ADDS. So far.
So Enrique, if I want to install ADDS, which PowerShell command do I use?
Install or add.
You'll probably be install.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Install what?
ADDS. Um,
If you can,
uh,
it's a good assignment for you. If you can do it now, it's a good assignment. Make sure you do it on your lab. The reason why I'm giving you this is because who knows, you may get questions on them.
oh man, this is a hard one.
Time up. Time up.
Ah, shoot, sorry. Yeah,
It's alright. Okay, we got this other one. Okay, so Enrique, you got a domain controller here. So you want to create the IFM media, and so let's log in for you. Let me get come on. Um. Oh, sorry. This.
You did wrong the first step.
Enrique, there you go. So create IFM media.
Mm.
Mm, mm, mm.
No?
you're having fun with this, aren't you, David?
What? No, no, it's not bad. It's not bad. I tell you one of the reasons why I get some of this from. I told Enrique before. I said when I was studying for my CCNA, there was one guy from the US, from Milwaukee area in the US. So there's a group online called Router God. So I was preparing for my CCNA and all that, and this guy was like one day, one Sunday, was like, David, you want to do some labs? I said, yeah, sure. He said, I'll give you access to my server. So I connected to his server. Then he gave me this really complicated lab. Say you have, say you have 2 hours to do it. He said, don't look at Google. He said 2 hours to this lab. And I was there from like 8 a.m. in the morning till like 10 p.m. at night.
Oh my god.
And I was there constantly. The guy went to sleep and woke up and went to sleep and woke up, and I was still there. And I still could not finish the lab. But I tell you what it did. It gave me a lot of confidence because eventually I looked up Google, did everything. Then I was like, if I can finish this lab, there's nothing they can ask me in the CCNA exam that I can't answer.
Right.
So yeah, yeah, that's one of the reasons why, it's good to do challenges like this.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Enrique,
So I have a question for you guys. So
yeah,
this is going to be my fifth time,
yeah.
and I have to pass because I think Microsoft only allows you to take the exam 5 times a year.
Mm.
But they did say, I don't know if they did say, if you email them or, they might allow you to take it again, but I don't know if that's ever happened to anybody. You know if that ever happened or?
No, I've not, but I can try to do some research online. I've not,
Okay.
I've not really. But the thing is, I've just go for it when you're really confident. So when you're confident, when it's not as if you can answer every question, but when you're confident that there's no question I can ask you in the 74th and curriculum that you can answer at least 80% of them.
Right.
So that means if I come one day and I'm like, yeah, was it um IFM media create it? You're like, yeah, sure. Like
Right.
Active Directory user create using PowerShell. Give it this property. I'm like, sure. So once you get to
Am I
that
in the
place,
right way?
you're in the right direction, Enrique, but you're missing
Mhm.
something. You're missing something important. If you want to
Mm.
ntds still, you have 1 more minute. You can use help. Help will give you just help command will give you help on that. So help command gives you the help on that.
Uh,
Mm,
This way? Can you help me?
you time up.
Yeah, okay.
You figure it out eventually. What you're looking for is
Ah, okay, no problem. But
that's what you're looking
this,
for.
okay.
Then you can do help. Help will tell you what next to do. So after that,
Okay. Right now, I
yeah, but time is up. So we got
okay.
so so what else? So who wants to go for the
There's
next
no
one?
point for me.
So you got two more. So who wants to go? Which one do you want to go for, Jose? Before we get move on to the
Oops.
last one.
Let me take a look here. Configure DC to host account server. I can try to do number 3, but I can't do that
Number
without
three.
having number 1.
Number three is probably the easiest of them all. So yeah, there you go. You have a domain controller, global catalog. So you want to make this domain controller a global catalog.
Okay. Uh,
Mm-mm.
I think we should do this together. If we get endpoints, we can split the point.
yeah. Go ahead. I
Nice one.
agree. Go ahead and get me started, Enrique.
um, we should try tools and some option about Active Directory. Out of the administrative center, I think that the first
I'll
one
give you
is
I'll give you a pointer. You're looking for sites and services.
sites and service. Oh, right click somewhere and checkbox.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. So I think it's
So let's go.
property. Actually, hold on.
So that's
Oh,
somewhere is where
oh,
we're looking for now.
yeah, yeah.
Server.
Okay. Hertz.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, there you go. So you got 5 points, so you split 2.5 each.
Yeah, great.
So last one. So I'll go for the last one. So the last one is change the default location of users and computers. Again, this is one of the ones I want to pay attention to because Microsoft likes this question, this particular
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
So in other words, if you just go and create a user using PowerShell, or you join a computer to the domain and you don't specify the OU, it will just create the user in the user's container or create the computer in the computer's container. But now you want to change the default OU. You want to say, okay, if you create a user by default, put them in this OU, don't put them in this default container. So how do you do that? So who wants to go for that? Enrique? So
Um, I know that we
feel free
have
to
a
collaborate.
command,
Yep.
but I don't remember exactly the command. It's something like cmpt.
Let's take you to the Active Directory computer. Yep, there you go. This is domain controller. Uh, can you see? So you have PowerShell up there. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's exit. Let's go
Okay.
control. Yeah, there you go. So
Uh,
so you want to change the default location of users and computers.
it's something like cmp. No. I think that is reduce
Yep, you're in the right direction.
cmp, something like that. Okay.
Yeah, just put the two together.
This
Mm-hmm. So what else do
and
you need? Good one, very good one.
oh,
There you go, very, very good one.
cn. I don't know. Blah blah blah. The name of your new OU, is
Let's
that
go.
correct?
Yeah. So what we'll do is let's go to Active Directory users and computers, and let's create a
Mm-hmm.
new OU for you.
Okay.
So let's go new OU. Let's call it test. So new OU tests. So now we have a new OU called test. So once we redirect it to test. So carry on, fire on, come on. So the domain is alatum.com. The OU is so for a distinguished name. What do you
Mm-hmm.
where do you start? You start from the lowest level, right? The lowest level. You start from the OU level.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the OU is called test.
Okay. Test. It's just a comma.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then
After.
the this is the next one. Hmm.
Can I try?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Mm.
So what does it say?
It's not a OU, but it is a U. Oh, it's DN. Oh yeah, because hmm, not sure about it.
No, you're right. It's OU. It's not DN.
Okay, OU, GC, GC. Uh, mm,
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah. If you
well,
present her to that. Yeah. Present
try
her.
again.
Yeah. Present her to that. And then do the same thing for user. So which one do you use for user?
user.
Instead of CMP, it will be user, USR, USR without the E. Without the E, yeah.
Oh,
Yep,
this.
yeah. So try creating a new user, see if that works.
Um, how can I do this? Add. Oh no, add no. As it says new because I don't have this.
Mm. So new AD user.
Like this.
No, not hard. Just new AD user. You can use tab to complete it. That's a single D.
Okay.
Yep. So no, just use new AD user. It will ask you for the questions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Name. Yep. So
Oh,
go and check where they created it. Let's see if that's successful or not. Let's see. So if you check the users, is Enrique there? Yeah, Enrique is still there. So that means it didn't accept that command.
yeah. And I think that we have missed something like here, uh, comma or semi-comma. No?
So let's see. So let's see this one. So if I go back
Mm-hmm.
to the OU,
Oh yeah, because
let's go back to okay, let's user. Yeah,
what? Because it is not a PowerShell command.
let's see. Yeah, because it's not a
Okay,
PowerShell command. That's why.
okay.
Yeah. So now if you create another user, let's go. Yeah, go ahead and create another user called Jose. So just use the up button to go to your previous command.
Sorry.
So create another user called Jose. So
Mm-hmm.
use the up button to go to the previous one. The up button, the up one. You can just use the up arrow, sorry. So create a
Because
new
we don't have in a
PowerShell.
PowerShell
Yeah. So
here.
yeah, with that you can always type PowerShell and it will take you back to PowerShell.
Okay.
So if you cancel all that and type PowerShell, it will take you back to PowerShell.
We don't have the button again,
Okay.
and so
New AD user.
mm, new.
The hyphen. Get your hyphen.
Sorry.
The new AD. Yeah. And then yeah, that, yeah, yeah. And then if you go to see there, so where's the default location now? Yeah,
There
here we
we
go.
go.
Good one. Good one. Well done,
Yeah.
guys. So that's it for today. So the recording should be up latest by the beginning of next week. I'll try to put it up as soon as